What it do, what it is, what it ain't. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Get Right Podcast. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to get notifications of new content. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you dig? Cue the music. Yo, what it do, what it is, what it ain't. It's your boy T. It's the Get Right Podcast, man, and we are back, still rolling. National Women's Month, man. But of course, I'm never rolling solo. I got the homie with me, the brain trust. Rod, what's some 3 words, bro?
What up, dope?
Yes, sir. And the people, they hate to love, love to hate. Formerly known as Mr. Misconception himself. He's the trigger man. DC, what's good?
Yo, no, they love me, man. You know what I'm saying? They love me, man. I'm a man of the people. It's your boy DC in the place to be, aka the Trigger Man. Shout out to my 80s babies, man. Let's go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got another guest. And I know a lot of people love this lady. A lot of people love this lady. She's the lead video producer at NPR Music and Visuals. She's also at Hybrid Music. She's also a Grammy winner. Yeah, she's a Grammy winner. Talk that talk. And she's a co-host of 1001. 1,000 Eyes in One. See? 1,000 Eyes in One podcast. She's a co-host there. And I'm going to ask about that too. And it's a good friend of mine. Shout out Heidelberg, because we bring a lot of people. If you went to school in Germany, you know what it is. But man, we got Nikki Birch. What's good?
Hi. Yo, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for
I'm
asking
excited
me.
to finally track you down.
Yeah.
So,
Yo.
I'm happy to
Life
have
is so
you.
crazy.
So yeah, go ahead. Tell us what you're doing. Where you located? What you're doing right now? What's going on?
I am coming in from Brooklyn.
Okay.
I am about to celebrate. Exactly. Bushwick. You know what it's at. It'll be 20 years that I've been here in August.
Oh damn. Okay.
And that's wild. I thought that I was going to be here for like 4 or 5 because I went to St. John's. Woo woo! Shout out Big East tournament winners. First time in also 20 years because they were okay when I was there, but
they balling this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm lead video producer. I work at NPR, NPR Music and Visuals. And yeah, I mean, ask me questions. I can't do this.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions. Like, first, I'm gonna get right into it because out of the 3 of us, I know you a little bit more. You were definitely quiet and reserved. You spoke.
When did we meet? When did you move to Heidelberg?
Ooh, some years.
Yeah.
I know we really. I don't want to say got close because people are like, what does that mean when you got close? So, but towards our junior year and senior year, because you were dating a popular guy named John Berlin back then.
God.
Shout out John.
Shout out John. You're not supposed to say that. My dad didn't know.
Hey, sorry, Pop. It's all good. But I would say
have been confirmed. I've never beat the allegations.
Edit.
Hey, I would say this though. For basketball fans who knew Jason Williams as White Chocolate.
Yeah.
John Berlin is probably like that guy before Jason Williams, man. But super cool dude.
Yeah.
That's when I started seeing around. Everybody always gave you that resemblance to Janet Jackson because you always had your hair in braids from Poetic Justice. That was what we grew up as knowing. But you were mostly reserved. You kind of kept to yourself. You did what you in school. You say what's up to people, but you keep it moving. Like if anybody was like anybody know in the lunchroom, they beatboxing on the table, they playing music in the classroom or on the back of the buses or whatever that was. You never was like a part of that.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to know, like, and I told you I was gonna ask you this, like, how the hell you get into music and like now, like where'd the passion fall from? Where'd you fall in, like deep in love with that?
I mean, I've always been in love with music. I told you when we talked a little bit, I think music maybe was a little bit private for me. It's something in my family that I had that was just my own. I have a kind of a big family. And I was living with 3 brothers and 2 sisters and a brother, Jackie, Johnny, and Bess. Shout out to the Birches.
Yeah, shout out.
But music was always there. My mom always played music in the house. My dad did every once in a while when we were driving like in the car. But I was the kid who was checking out Tchaikovsky records from the library when I was like in 1st grade. So yeah, it's always been there. I was a Radiohead. I listened to everything that was on the radio. I had the cassette tapes. I was recording songs, listening to AFN. Shout out to Joel Scruggs because he was in the Army and he joined our youth group when I think I was a junior or a senior. And he used to do the afternoon radio show. So I would bug him. I'd be like, hey, play this song. Hey, play this song. Hey, play this song. And every once in a while, the higher ups would be like, I can't believe that you played that song. Don't play that song again. I was like, yeah. So yeah, I always music was always a part of my life. I joked to my parents that, I would get grounded sometimes for doing stuff. And, they're like, what, you want me to go to my room? Okay. I'm going to go in my room and read books and listen to music. Like, if they really wanted to punish me, they should have taken my stereo system out.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Man, that's what's up. Because like I said, I never saw you as that. You were, someone that was popular because everybody knew who Nikki was. But you were very quiet.
I'm
You
just
know what
private.
I mean?
I value my
Yeah.
privacy.
Popular and quiet. That's like an oxymoron, ain't it?
Bro.
Yeah.
And as anybody, everybody knew who Nikki was, but she kept to herself.
I always I guess I was involved in several different circles, and that's why it might seem like I wasn't here, I wasn't there. Because I had ROTC, I had the youth group, Catholic youth group. I was the basketball dudes because I was a statistician for the men's basketball team, so I used to always travel with them.
Yep.
And just stuff outside because I didn't live on base. I had an entire other group of friends, and those are the people that I hung out with outside of school. So yeah,
real G's move in silence like lasagna.
all day. There was one game. Speaking of basketball, I had 19 points and 13 assists in the game, and I swore I had 14. And I asked Shahan about it, and he's like, "Take it over with Nikki." So I just stayed at the back of the bus and didn't say nothing.
Oh, you should have said something.
Nah.
You should have said something.
Hey, here's why.
Please.
You it could have been the RBF, respectfully, but you didn't you was in that mood. So I was like, I'm about to sit back here and just chop it up with Kyle.
You know what? I wasn't allowed to sit in the back of the bus because Shahan and my dad played basketball together, and I had to sit in the front. One time, me and John were sitting together, and he was like, "Nope." He moved me up to the front. So yeah, I just listen to my music, keep it moving.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep it there.
So T, you was scared. Basically, you was scary. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that moment.
He was also super intimidating on the basketball court. His nickname was Gizmo, and he was super fast and would run around and have rebounds and shit. But there was a move that he used to do where he would be defending somebody and he would slap his hands on the court and kind of growl at them. And we were always like, whoa, when you see the shooketh look of intimidation in those people's eyes, that's such a memorable thing for me. I always love that.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
Gizmo.
Yeah, so I got
Gizmo.
I tell you that story. Yep. And so that stuck with me even to college to now. Playing football. When I got there to Heidelberg playing football, Coach Travis Reynolds. I don't know if you knew him, Nikki, but he's the offensive coordinator. And he was like, "Yo," I was like, "I just want to play corner, play nickel. That's what I do." He was like, "Man, you gonna play offense, you gonna play special teams, you gonna play a little bit of running back, you're gonna be like a gizmo." And so and then it just stuck. He was like, "Yo, Gizmo." He just throw Gizmo in the play, let him plug and play, and it just stuck, and I never could shake it. And I just live with it, bro.
Yeah,
I just live with it. But shout out Coach Reynolds. Yeah.
He was a gremlin before Kodak, man.
All day. And then the slapping on the floor, yeah, man. I used to do that. You make a big play, and I'll play. I pick you up from full court, because Coach gave me that green light to do that. And I used to slap on the floor, growl. Gary Payton was my favorite. Was my favorite point guard back then. That's why I wore 20. And so I was like, "Yo, I want to be like GP. I want to be the glove. I want to be all those things." Yeah, I remember that. And it'd be. I remember times when I didn't do those things, where people would be like, "Yo, how come you ain't smack on the floor, bro? You gotta get hyped up. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm just playing, man. It comes when it comes. It comes when it comes." But
this guy thought he was playing for Duke.
Yeah, all day. That was the thing.
Yeah, Heidelberg had a great team. We really did. I mean, I don't think anybody will ever recover from the heartbreak of being undefeated until that championship game. Oh my God.
Y'all went undefeated all season and lost the championship game?
Yep.
Yeah.
I wasn't on that team.
Yeah. It was
I was next up.
That was varsity. That was varsity.
I was next up though.
And they had such a squad. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, by 7 people was all right. Like colleges was like, come on. Yeah, they were yeah, they were dogs. Yeah, and the team that they lost to, they blew them out twice in that season.
Yeah.
I'm talking about 20 points or more.
Yeah, we were really looking forward to winning that game. That was a quiet bus ride.
But I know you talked about, silence, locked in your room, music.
Yeah.
You started your career at Hybrid Music, tracking you down. Well, how did you land
How did I?
there? What was that journey like?
Yeah. So I met Tariq Khan. He's the co-founder, I guess, of Hybrid Music. He's a producer, crazy musician, just like everything, like multi-hyphenate from Montreal, New York. And I met him when my friends moved into this amazing building. Shout out to 345 Elder. Um, I was walking down the hallway and this dude comes out like smoking a joint and playing a violin. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? You know? And we started to talk, and he had a studio right across the hall from my friend's apartment. So I used to just go hang out there. I remember I used to be tight because there was all this good music that he was playing. I was like, oh, can I have that? Like, I want to download it, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no. And I was like, but why not? He's like, it's unreleased. And I was like, and I didn't really understand the significance of that until much later. So I used to go and like hang out there after school, but then I had to take a bit of a sabbatical and go back to Virginia to make enough money to finish my senior year. And when I came back after I graduated, I remember I was over at the studio and he was like, so what are you going to do with your life now? And I was like, oh, shit, what a question. Because, it was 2010, 2011. Y'all know what the economy was like back there. I was applying for jobs. And my background was psychology with a minor in creative writing. And I guess military science and history for ROTC, whatever. I didn't actually go through with that for many reasons. I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, why don't you help me build this thing? And I was like, okay, because, I like being in the studio. I like music. And at first I was just kind of like a hostess. Because I didn't have any skills that were related to music. And so I would just like greet the clients when they came in and like help with the sessions. And then I was like writing documents about like procedural stuff. And then after he saw the Bilal This Is Love video that they recorded in the studio, he was like, yo, I want to do that. Because the thing about Tariq, besides him being a genius in so many ways, is that he built, like, I've seen him build so many studios, but he built this thing called a recording lounge. And basically, it's a venue that looks like a studio that looks like a venue. So you walk through these doors of this apartment, and then suddenly there's like a stage and a grand piano, and there's lightings and a bar, and it's got 2 levels. Because he always said that, you get the best performances out of an artist when they record in front of an audience. And he learned this because he was mentoring an artist from Cuba who would like night after night, she would perform and just be like incredible in front of people. But when she got into the booth, nada, no energy. And so since we were already doing these things, he's like, well, this is a thing that we could record. And my homeboy, Andreas Hofweber, shout out to him. He's from Munich. He was filming all the shows by himself with like all these little multiple cameras and GoPros. And one day, Tariq's dad, he was like, here's a camera that you guys have been wanting. So he gave the camera and I picked it up and I was like, poof, the rest is history. Because T knows, like, I was in video production when we were in high school. Like, if you look at, there are pictures of me from high school where I'm chilling on the front steps and I've got like a camcorder in my hand. So it was meant to be.
Nice. So you said Bilal was what inspired it all?
Yeah, Bilal was what inspired it all. And actually, I have had the pleasure of working with him many, 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 many times. I've shot several of his music videos. Yeah. I've done a couple. Just he's like cool. He was always one of my favorite artists. I remember I was dating this dude back in 2001, and he was like, listen to this album. He's like, yo, you should check this out. And I was like, what? Who is this woman? What a voice. And then I saw the album cover and I was like, yo, oh, it's a dude. And I was just like, he was somebody that I just always like admired and never thought I would get a chance to work with. Like I knew he was in the scene because I was having the opportunity to work with lots and lots of jazz musicians, and everybody knew him. He was the one that everybody like aspired to because he's an incredible singer, but just like nothing he does is the same. I don't know if you've ever seen him before live, but it's never the same show. If you get a chance to go, it's never the same show. And I met him because Tariq was in touch with Victor Duplay, who's like a crazy DJ producer, and he was on that BET show, Master of the Mix. And so I had the camera, and they're like, hey, do you guys want to come film behind the scenes of Red Carpet? So I go, and I'm new into this. I'm like so shy. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do here? I was like, just point the camera. You know that you'll feel comfortable if you're shooting. And I'm filming stuff, and this guy comes up behind me, and he was like, you gotta zoom in. And I was like, I looked behind my shoulder. I was like, who the fuck is is this? He was like, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, what are you? I was like, are you like a director or something? He's like, no, I'm a visionary. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Okay. Turns out the next day, like I didn't have a phone at the time because I was broke. I was like, yo, just record just like, I'm going to film you. Just give me your number. I'm going to save it on the camera. The next day we go to like this after party, and Victor is gonna like, he's like, hey, I want you to introduce you to this my homie. Like I think they went to college together. And I turn around and it's the same dude. He was like, this is Hans Elder. Shout out to Hans for always believing in me. And I was like, Hans, I was like, you? He was like, you? Turns out that he was Bilal's new manager.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's the
Nice.
definition
Bilal's
of
new
a
manager.
visionary.
Yo, it was crazy. Sometimes I talk to students because I have friends who who are professors like Berkeley College of Music or New School, and they ask me, "What's the most important thing that you can tell somebody?" And I was like, one, there's no shame in being able to pay your rent, so take whatever job is going to help you get to your dreams. And if that means that you got a waitress to be able to pay your rent or whatever, so you can like pursue the art that you're trying to do, that's that. But the second one is always be kind, because you never know who's in the room with you.
Facts.
Yeah, and that's real, man. And it sounds like networking as well. My daughter just graduated Full Sail University last year because
Congratulations.
she wants to get into the film industry, and I
Well,
push her
DC,
to kind of just
now you know somebody.
Yeah.
just push her to get outside. Like you said,
It's
just
hard. It's hard because I mean, Tina, he says that I was quiet, but I was quiet. Like I always like with my friend and my friend groups, I was always really outgoing. Leo Sun, Virgo Moon, Leo Rising. No, Leo Sun, Virgo Rising, Leo Moon, and I just didn't know. I felt like it was a bit of imposter. I mean, to be honest, I still have imposter syndrome. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here, why people let me do the things that I do sometimes. Honestly. But I remember after a gig one time, basically the way that we got people to come to Hyper Music, because nobody knew who we were and nobody was coming to Bushwick at the time, because that's before it was like, you could pay like $400 with 5 other people and like have a dope apartment, That's not the case anymore. Thanks to gentrification. Tariq would be like, oh, we go to a show and we just go and we'd film it. And then afterwards we go talk to the artist, be like, hey, we have this footage. Do you come with a hard drive, pick it up, just come to the studio. And so they'd come to the studio and we'd be like, well, look at this place that we have. And their minds would always be blown by the things that we were doing. And it was really hard for me because I didn't know these musicians. I didn't know like how to like approach them. And he was like, you're short, you're cute, just go smile at them. And I was like, okay. But then I realized that in New York City, being shy is a handicap. Like you will never get to where you want to go. So I learned really quickly, just like, what are my strengths? What are my superpowers for connecting and stuff? And, once I figured those out, I'm just like, oh, I don't have to pretend to be anybody. I just had to be myself. And that's what it was.
For sure.
Yeah.
Being in New York, that's interesting you say that, because I've never actually been to we're going to call it the city of like Manhattan area and like real New York. I've been to Buffalo. Shout out to Griselda, but I don't really consider that. That's upstate.
Yeah, no, the
really...
city is the city. Upstate is upstate. The city is the city.
For sure. But every time I envision, being in surroundings, I just, you see what's on TV and everything's so aggressive and in your face. So I'm like, I don't know if I would make it in New York, because I don't know. That's a little too much for me. But that's interesting that you said the transition and how you were able to really adapt. That's pretty dope.
I got to New York because I went to Holy Cross for a year and a half. Shout out to all my Holy Cross friends and my people. I really, really love the whole group of people I met there. But, Worcester, Massachusetts is cold. My first winter there, they got 6 feet of snow. It was 20 degrees below zero. And I was like, this is not for me. But also, I was so homesick and depressed. I hated it. As ready as I was to like get out to graduate for school, I wasn't ready to leave Germany, because Germany was my home. It was my first love. Besides the Muppets are actually my first love. And so like I left and I went back I worked at University of Maryland and I was getting my degree. And then the war, when we went back to war with Iraq, all my classes were getting canceled at University of Maryland because like the enrollment is soldiers. So I was like, geez, what am I gonna do now? And in the time between that, like I'd gone back to the States. I had a bunch of friends who were at Holy Cross who were from New York. And every time I went to New York, I was like, man, I love this energy. So you know, when I thought about it, I was like, well, where do I want to? I was like, you can go to college anywhere, but where do you want to live? And it was New York. I was like, all right. So I applied to 5 schools in there. St. John's was my first choice, and I got in, and I was gone. It was gone. Yeah. And I was also inspired by that George Michael song "Flawless" because he talks about you got to go to the city. You're gonna find you there. You know, they're gonna find you there. And yeah, that was the secret part of my motivation. The city's amazing. It's
Nice,
not for
nice.
everybody, but you know, people say that New
Nah, I
York
don't
is
think it'd be for
aggressive,
me.
but you know what? You know what it is? Like things move really quickly. People say that New Yorkers are nice. That's not true. They are super nice. They will help you out. I watched 3 people help the man on the train who fainted when I was coming back from a Roots show the other night. And like they just gathered around him. Like he wasn't drunk. He must have like locked his knees, like standing there because he just like collapsed in like slow motion. But everybody was just up and like ready to help him. And I've seen that so many times. But New York, I think it's a city where people really understand the value of time because rent is expensive, right? Get out of my way because I've got somewhere to be, because if I don't get to this thing, I'm going to get fired. You know, just like so many places,
Yeah.
but you feel the drive and the urgency here. So like when I leave the city and I'm like walking around with other people, like, why are you walking so fast? I'm like, oh, was I walking fast? Like there's just a pace.
That's great. So do you own a car?
No. That's why I moved here. Public transit is amazing. When I started working for NPR, they're like, you want to live here in DC or do you? I was like, I'm not coming to DC. Like, first of all my connections and network, they're here. And second of all, I would have to get a car or whatever, and everything shuts down there at 2. Like, no. The other reason I don't have a car, and every once in a while I get tempted to think about it, is like, I don't want to spend 45 minutes looking for parking every day.
That's a fact.
Yeah. No, thank
That's what's
you.
up. So how'd you end up with NPR?
Yeah. You know, it's been 5 years. 5 years since, you know, the beginning of COVID. And everything shut down. I remember my last gig was with Lakeisha Benjamin. Shout out to Lakeisha, 4-time Grammy nominee. And she had a gig at Dizzy's, which is part of Jazz Lincoln Center, one of their venues. And that was my last gig because then everything shut down. And when the venue shut down, that means the musicians don't play. And if the musicians aren't playing, that means that, you know, if my job is going out and filming gigs and studio sessions, like they have to play to be able to do that. But I also edit, and no, there's no video editing happening if musicians aren't making money. So everything shut down. And I went home for a little bit. I went back to Virginia for a while. That's where my parents live. And when I came back to New York, this woman that I work with, Melanie Watson, she was like, hey, there's this position at NPR. Like, you check it out. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then people kept tagging me. Like, I had no idea. People kept tagging me in the position or like posting it and sending it to me on Instagram. And I was like, what is that? I was like, maybe I should look at this job description, you know? So I opened it up and I was like, oh my God, this is everything that I already know how to do, but with a salary and health insurance. Like, I'm going to apply for this job. And so I did, but I kind of almost didn't get it because Tariq had this really ambitious idea. He uses a software to record called Cubase. Like, you know, there's Logic and Pro Tools and like Ableton.
Yeah, I
But
heard
he uses
Cubase.
but he uses Cubase. It's actually made by a German company, and they had this feature that allowed you to record kind of like Riverside, right? Artists could record from other places, like all over the world, and you could be on video, the video function, and they could record directly into the studio. So he wanted to see what would happen if, like, basically we had Bilal write an album in real time, collaborating with 20 other musicians. And we did a live stream of this. Every single second of this was live stream. So for 72 hours, we were awake. I was like taking little naps with my dog Tips, R.I.P., like in one of the booths. And something like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning on like the third day, I got a call from the hiring manager, and he was like, yo, are you going to do the assignment? And I was like, what assignment? He was like, we emailed you this assignment as part of the interview, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I am so sorry. I have literally been live on YouTube since like Saturday, Friday, or whatever day it was. This must have been since Friday because he called me on a Monday. And I was like, yo, I'll do that shit right now. And so then I did it. I had a couple interviews and I got the job. And yeah, that's how I got there. But, you know, had I been ignoring social media the way I do now, I probably would have never known about it.
Divine intervention.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody who like hit me up about it. You know, especially Simon Rentner, who used to work for WBGO and now works with NPR. Because he called me and he was like, hey, you should apply for this job. You know jazz, you know the scene, you connected with all these musicians. Like, I think that you're perfect for it. And so do they. So yeah.
So prior to getting there, real quick, Rob, I'm gonna ask this question. Prior to getting to NPR, 2013, you won a Grammy.
I did.
You won a Grammy. Prior to your tenure to NPR, you won a Grammy.
Yeah.
You know, working with Lala Hathaway.
Yeah, it was Snarky Puppy and Layla Hathaway was one of the featured artists. They have these albums called Snarky Puppy Family Dinner. Snarky Puppy is such a dope band. I love every single dude in that band and everyone who's a part of it, because talk about just beautiful, kind people who are so extremely talented. And I'd done a couple of things with them here and there because they did a thing at our studio. And, you know, I always say it's one of the most important phone calls I ever picked up, because Mike Lee, he called me. He was like, "Hey, Nikki, we're going to go do this thing down in Virginia at the Jefferson Center. Do you want to come? It's like 3 days. We're going to record an album, you know. Just you want to be a videographer?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come down there for like, you know, several days and just hang out with you guys and film whatever you guys do, because everything you do is amazing." And I'll never forget this. We had set up and we were filming, and basically they had like an audience come in to watch this performance, and they played something with Layla Hathaway, right? And she's singing, it's beautiful, everybody's jamming, and then she did the thing where she harmonized and sang 3 notes at once. And when I tell you that I got goosebumps, it was like the air got sucked out of the room, because everybody was like, "What just happened?" Oh my God, I've never felt anything like that before, and probably I might not ever again, because it was one of those moments where you just know something special happened and everybody reacted the same way. Corey Henry, who's incredible, just everything. Shout out to Corey. I love that dude. He was playing and he jumped. He like was like, "Oh my God," I think Sput the drummer jumped up and ran out from the drum kit. You can see this all in the video. And I was just, yo, this is gonna be really special. And then it got nominated for Best R&B Performance. And you know, I was like, you know, happy for the band, but I didn't realize that everybody on the crew also, that means that you win a Grammy too. Yeah.
Where's your Grammy?
So you get a
It's
trophy
over
too?
there.
It's over there. She like, I was just over there.
It's over there. No, you know, I mean, you can order a trophy, but I got the certificate, and it's, you know, it's over there on my mantle.
That's what's up.
Congratulations. That's dope.
Yep. Now we know a Grammy winner. We know one.
Yeah.
We know one. So how's that tenure been at NPR? Like, you doing the, you know, the lead visuals, you're doing all those cool things. Every day I see you now, you're taking selfies with everybody from Tiny Desk that we all rave about, that we critique.
Go ahead, please.
No, but how's that been? How's that journey been?
It's cool. Like I got hired to be a video producer for Jazz Night in America, which is the jazz show at NPR. Working in jazz is always a bit of an uphill battle, because, you know, when you think jazz, people often think just like saxophone or old people, when that's the last thing you should be thinking about. Jazz is a Black invention, you know, like this is music that we created. It's music that talks about, it's like protest and social music and struggle and just like self-expression and creativity and community. I knew from working with Tariq and working in the scene that there were lots and lots of young people who were doing it at an extremely high level. And I think about my time working with High Beam Music, it was like I have a video yearbook of everybody before they were, you know, just so many people that have gone on to become like Grammy winners and have done scores for like TV shows and movies. And yeah, it's been really crazy. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Revive Music Group, because our dear friend Megan Stabile, rest in peace, she was a big driving force in this music community, because she wanted to make sure that jazz musicians, especially young ones, were getting the same kind of exposure as the older cats, but also like mainstream people. Like she built a platform. Like we simultaneously had platforms that were celebrating the same musicians. So my first when we were in lockdown, Tiny Desk they couldn't have people into the office, so they started doing home concerts. And they asked me if I wanted to produce one for Black History Month, and I was like, I never thought I was going to be able to produce Tiny Desk. Like, that's wild, like super, super crazy. And so my first one was Melanie Charles, and that was like really well received. The cool thing about it for me was that I got to write because writing, I don't know if people know this, but like I'm a writer. I love to write. And so I got to write something for NPR, and it was like, oh, produce Tiny Desk, and I get to like, my words are going to be out there. Like, this is crazy. And then as you know, as I grew in my career, as I've grown in my career there, rather, they've asked me like, hey, is there someone you want to produce, or who's an artist at whatever? And I was like, y'all are giving me a lot of trust. And so then I just started like pitching these people. And like every time I bring somebody in, it's fire. You know, it really is, because I have a lot of respect for musicians, and working with jazz musicians is really like, my ear like evolved so rapidly to the point that I can hear when somebody's singing out of tune now, and it hurts my feelings. There's stuff from the 90s that I can't go back and listen to because I'm like, ooh.
I was just gonna ask you that question.
I'm not gonna tell you who, but I'll tell you offline. I'll tell you offline. But yeah, and so they, you know, I've had a lot of, I guess, like success with that, because in the last 2 years, me and my partner in crime at NPR, Mitra Arthur, there have been more jazz Tiny Desk produced in, you know, in the last years that Tiny Desk has been around, because we're just going to keep bringing them. We want people to get exposed to this music, because whether you realize it or not, jazz musicians are the backbone of the music industry. Like, they play with everybody that you like. Name an artist as a jazz musician in their band. Like, doesn't matter what genre. Some of them might not like classical. They have their own bag, but like, yeah, they are everywhere. They are everywhere.
You hear that, DC? DC hates jazz, so
Not a big fan.
You know what?
Not a
I
huge
have a
fan.
playlist I have 2 playlists that I like to send, and I've been meaning to build the jazz one, but one is classical for haters, and the second is jazz for haters. So I got you.
there you go.
Yeah, we'll be ready for that. So I guess with those artists that perform, right, you were able to procure, I guess, I don't want to call them background musicians or so forth.
No, these are musicians with their own band. Like, I'm bringing artists who have their own projects, and that's how I know them, because I've worked with them for several years. You know, like Keon Harold is a trumpeter that I've known forever, and he performed at Hybrid Music. A lot of people who performed at Hybrid, I'm like, well, I have access to a platform now that is huge. NPR Music has 10 million followers on YouTube, and these are people like, the people who I'm bringing. It's like kind of like the same philosophy that we had at Hybrid Music. You have to be great. You have to be like a virtuoso at your instrument. You have to be authentic. You have to have music that sounds timeless. Like the stuff that we recorded at Hybrid, it still sounds good right now, because the artists are just like of that caliber. But also, you have to be a nice person. Like, I don't want to work with assholes. Like, life is too short, and like, there's so much tension and things. Like, you have to be kind. Like, I don't want to work with somebody who's not going to be cool, because the Tiny Desk team, like, that crew is amazing. They shoot 3 shows a week. Like, shout out, like, everybody. Shout out to Bobby Carter. Shout out to Saray Muhammad. Like, Kara Frame, Maya Stern, Josh Newell, Josh Bryant. Who else am I forgetting? I feel bad. You guys know I love you. And they work really, really hard. That video production team, it's just like, and audio team, they're busting their ass all the time, because when they're not filming, they're editing those videos, they're mixing that audio and stuff. And so the stuff that I do has a lot more to do with the pre-production and, I guess, like, artist procurement. So, like, you know, reaching out to an artist and talking to their managers, and, like, you know, getting all the logistical stuff done for them to come in, and then writing the copy that goes out. And I mean, I'm just really lucky. I get to work with, literally, when I tell people like I get to work with the best musicians in the world, I mean that. They are the best musicians in the world.
Man,
it's so funny,
that's
because I'll bring
crazy.
people to shows. I'm like, yo, you want to go to a show? My friend's playing. My friend is in a band, and they're playing. And they're like, you know, they give you okay, your friend is in a band. Okay, I'll go to this venue. You're inviting me, and it's free. And I'm like, I take them, and they're like, oh my God, their head is exploding, because they didn't expect it to be that good. But they are. They are.
So
I mean,
let me ask you this: you're doing so much, and like you just said
oh
it,
my God.
you're working with so many teams. There's deadlines to meet. There's deadlines behind the deadline to meet another deadline.
Let me tell
There's
you.
multiple people moving around. Like, how do you keep even keel and that energy high with the team that you work with?
It's easy. It's easy because I mean, like with just any job, like, things are stressful, right? There's a lot of communication that has to be had. There's like personalities that have to be managed. But the thing about Tiny Desk and everybody who works there and people who produce it is that people are bringing in music that they are passionate about. They're bringing in music that gets them excited. So for me, it doesn't matter who it is. Like if I have the honor of bringing them in and producing them, like it's exciting. It's exciting. Like I think like I've produced, I don't know how many it is now, but I produced one that came out in January that I think may have been the proudest moment of my life, because I'm St. Lucian, right? I'm St. Lucian. Soca music is a huge part of my life. It always has been.
First Grammy winner from St. Lucia, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, listening to that.
Yeah, that too. I
humbled in the mug.
It's like weird to hear that shit. You're like, oh, what? But there was a soca artist, Machel Montano, and he is the king of soca. Like he's been performing since he performed at Madison Square Garden. I can't remember, he was like 8 or 10 years old with like the biggest names in soca: Lord Kitchener, the Shadow, and the Mighty Sparrow, who are all iconic and like pioneers of that music. And for a couple of years, I was like, man, we should do soca. We should do soca. Nobody's talking about soca. And it would like, I know that the audience and the people from my Caribbean cultures are watching this, and we're not represented here. And so it took over a year for everything to come together. But when that Tiny Desk dropped, it was incredible. Like I'm in there, I'm in the room. I'm so excited. I brought my St. Lucian flag. My mom, my dad, my sister, her boyfriend came. Like I'm looking up and people are coming in, because Tiny Desk is actually filmed in an office. The desk is really small. It is an office. People work there on the days that, there's nothing happening. There's people who are not in NPR music working down on the side. And, the audience who comes, they're the people who work at NPR, and maybe like they'll bring a friend or two. But I'm standing there and people are coming in. I'm seeing Guyanese flags and Bajan flags. I'm seeing flags from like all the islands. And that was so cool. So when it dropped, I had to take a moment. They had 4,000 views in a couple of hours. And I was just like, yo, that Tiny Desk hit 1 million views in 2 weeks.
Nice.
And just like, I've never seen a comment, like I don't ever read the comments, but for this one, I was like really proud. So I read the comments, and like people, it was like extremely positive. And sometime later that night, I was just sitting there and I was like, yo, I think this might be one of the most important things I have ever done in my life, because just I'm getting to see like the islands represented, and just so proud. And like that was the day that I actually took a moment just to be proud of myself, because I did that shit, y'all.
Congratulations.
That's what's
Good
up,
for you.
man. Now, do we know how the concept of Tiny Desk came about? Because NPR is basically a news network.
Yeah.
How does that correlate?
Someone sitting in the room like, I'm on live music.
Right. At this little ass desk.
Yeah. Well, there's a story. So NPR Music, I think there might be 17 years old this year, because the 15th anniversary, I can't remember what year that was, but it passed because of whatever. It passed a couple of years ago. And Bob Boylan and Stephen Thompson were at South by Southwest, and they were there checking out music, and because they had this on a show called All Songs Considered, and they were just down to South by Southwest, and there was a singer-songwriter who was performing. Forgive me because I can't remember her name. And they couldn't hear her because people were like in the bar, they were being loud and just making so much noise, and they could hear that she sounded good, but they didn't. They felt really upset because like they didn't get a chance to experience it. And one of them said to the other, like, wouldn't it be fun if we just had her come and perform in the office? And so that's what happened. They brought her in. They set up a camera had her sit behind Bob Boylan's desk. Like when performances were over, before he left NPR, like he would go back and sit at his desk and continue to work. So yeah, that's how it came to be.
That's what's up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Over drinks.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Over drinks.
Yeah. So if you ever go to a show and an artist is performing, please be quiet.
For sure.
Please be quiet. Like respect their art. Like this is their job. This is how they're paying their rent. And I think what people don't realize is that, it's really, really, like even if you're made for the stage, it's really difficult to get up in front of people and expose yourself. Because it's just you and your voice, or it's just you and your instrument, and people could easily go boo, And the other thing is that think about all these love songs and heartbreak songs that are like maybe become the soundtrack of your life. Now imagine that you wrote that and you have to go sing that song like 4 times a week in front of people, reliving the worst day of your life constantly. So yeah, like respect the artist. It's hard. It is.
Man, that's
it is
a
not
crazy
easy.
perspective. Now that makes sense, because I always wonder, and this is me talking, like that you got somebody at Tiny Desk, and like, come on, everybody get in. And you hear them here be like, woo, and I'm like, man, it's got to be more people behind that camera.
Yeah,
But I guess
yeah.
it's the fact that, hey, we just want to remain quiet as
Well,
possible
no, that's not
to
true.
give you
It
the
depends
space.
on the size of the audience who comes.
Okay.
You know, some days it's a big crowd, some days it's not so big. Maybe people have things to do in the office. Maybe the artist isn't really that well known, so they don't have a following of people. And sometimes it might just be the placement of the microphones.
Ah,
Now,
Yeah.
now, were you in the office when Juvenile was playing Back That Ass Up? Because that shit was hype.
No, but I watched that.
Yeah.
Yes, it
I
was.
watched it
Classic Tiny Desk.
because they have an intranet stream. So like if you're working at NPR, like, you know, if you're and you can't come to the office, they do like a internal stream that you can watch. And I watched it. I was sitting right here at my desk and I was like, Back That Ass Up is a song that you cannot sit down to. Like, there's no way. There's no way. Like, it doesn't matter the other songs. And I was like, yo, my friend texted me. He was like, I heard this is the thing. I was like, first of all, I don't know how you heard that because nobody's supposed to know. But it was a big deal because, you know, people were on Twitter talking like Juvenile should do a Tiny Desk. And he was like, what the fuck? I'm not going to do that shit. And then people were like,
Oh, wow.
they like lit him up. They're like, what? He's like, I don't know what Tiny Desk is. And people lit him up in the comments and like were retweeting. And then he was like, you know what? If this tweet reaches, I forgot how many people, he's like, then I'll do a Tiny Desk. And it did. And so then he slid into Bobby Carter's DMs. He was like, yo, so I heard you're the guy.
That's what's
Yeah.
up,
And
man.
yo,
Hey,
it was
I'm gonna retweet that
crazy.
story.
I'm
It was-
glad y'all made that happen, man. That is
Yo,
one of my
that is all
favorite
Bobby.
ones.
Bobby Carter is responsible for the blackening of Tiny Desk. They can come fight me for that, but it's true.
So yeah, that Juvie is my favorite. What would be your favorite Tiny Desk experience, Nikki?
Man, I mean, the Michelle Montano Tiny Desk might be one of my favorites just because of, you know, the significance of it. But I've got a lot of favorites. Like the Usher Tiny Desk is crazy. The SWV Tiny Desk, I was there. I got to bring my best friend Tanya and my sister Jackie to see that one. The Maxwell Tiny Desk was bananas.
He killed that.
Like, oh my God, I've seen, and those are all ones that I was in the room for. The Usher, I wasn't there, and I kicked myself forever because I remember knowing that there were going to be a lot of people, but I've seen Usher perform a few times. So I was like, you know, let me save a space for somebody else to go.
Look at her
that
not
was
being selfish.
Oh man, and I that's not that I'll regret it, but I do wish that I was in the room for that one. And there's some really good ones that are coming up. And I would, you know what, the other one, Revive Big Band, Igmar Thomas and the Revive Music Big Band, because like I said, shout out to Revive Music Group and Igmar Thomas and Radar Ellis, who are all the founders of that. Because they're like, if you know what, DC, you might not like jazz, but when I tell you this is big band jazz, like you have never heard it before. Woo. I think that's actually one of my like prerequisites for like artists and musicians that I want to bring in there. It's like I've always talked about like, what is your woo? Like especially in jazz when somebody's like the thing that makes you go woo, like that. Like I want that to happen. If you can make that come out of my mouth, then yeah.
Oh, you in? That's what's up.
I tell you what, T and I and our wives, just not T and I, but you know, our wives went as well. Went to see the Terrence Young Experience once.
Man,
I don't know if you ever witnessed Terrence Young, but
I haven't.
Yeah, that was dope.
Amazing.
Right? And that was jazz, right? There's a jazz bar here in Charlotte that, you know, we don't go too frequent, but we did go to see him, and I was pleasantly surprised. Because I'm not going to say I'm a huge jazz enthusiast. Right. However, I'm not opposed to it either, right? Like, I still love To Pimp a Butterfly. DC hates it because it's jazz related. But I am trying to get my ear a little bit more open as I get older. And jazz is definitely one of those things that I just remember my uncle, like that's all he plays. Mm-hmm. He would have subwoofers and everything, right? But only play jazz. I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah, that's different. But
you know what?
That's his genre.
You know what it is? I think people think that all jazz is the same, and it's not. I produce a monthly playlist that's actually going to be quarterly now, called On the List. And basically I take new releases from jazz and I put them out, and I make a playlist and to share that with people. Part of it is music discovery. Part of it is because the more you stream, I mean, you can talk about streaming services and the, evils or, whatever about them and how artists don't get paid the same for that. And so the more you stream somebody, if you like a song, stream it. Like put that shit on repeat because it really, really helps the artist. If there's an artist that you really like and listen to on whichever streaming platform that you enjoy, follow them. But there's different kinds of jazz. Like I like to talk about uppercase jazz versus lowercase jazz. You know, like uppercase jazz, you're paying $75 to get in. Lowercase jazz, like, you know, the cover's much less.
Okay.
And, you know, there's like swing. Or there's like
That's the
Egmar
stuff I'm
Thomas
not-
in the big band,
Yeah,
right?
it's hard for me to get into that.
And there's so many artists in so many eras. Like there's John Coltrane and Miles Davis, and there's people like Keon Harold who's mixing jazz with like R&B, or like the Revived Big Band, who it's big band jazz, but it's hip hop, you know. And then there's vocal jazz. A lot of it's funny because like vocal jazz I find to be really interesting because it is very polarizing within the community. Because you have to, you know, in jazz there's a lot. It's a really technical music, and when people think about jazz musicians, what you have to understand is that they might be playing an instrument, but it's like being a surgeon, right? These people have spent hours and hours and hours and hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours in a room by themselves practicing to get as good as they can, or as good as they are, to be able to play other stuff, but to also be able to find their own voice, and then to be able to improvise when they get with other people. Like jazz is a conversation, you know? It's like not just people playing together at a really high level, it's people listening to each other, you know? And so when somebody takes a solo, like that's, as a musician, that's their opportunity to express themselves. So always clap after a solo. People don't always know that. Always clap after a solo, because that was that person's moment to shine and to tell you how they're feeling in that moment. And so I can understand why some people don't like jazz. Like there is jazz that I'm not into. There's like like the shit that gives me anxiety. Whew, I know that people love it. I know that's like the math jazz, but it's like for me, like it doesn't make me feel good, and I want to listen to music that makes me feel good. The other thing about jazz is that you know, it helps create new neural pathways. So like I remember I was driving to, I don't know, Boston or DC or something, and I was listening to the radio station, like hip hop radio station. And as we all know, the sounds have sometimes kind of become the same. And I remember like I was driving, and it's like, not only was I getting annoyed because the same 4 songs were coming on every station every 15 minutes, but I just felt like I was starting to get in a bad mood, and just I didn't feel good, right? It totally is, because then I switched the station and it was classical, and suddenly my brain was active again. I felt better, you know. And then I switched to a jazz thing, and I was like engaged again in the same way. Like I could feel it in my brain and in my body that this was better. So yeah. Not that I don't like the other stuff. Like I love everything, but yeah.
No, that is true though, because I don't listen. I don't listen to the radio like at all, ever.
Good for you.
But you're right.
Good for you.
Yeah, but the kind of music you listen to, it does change your mood. Like a lot of times, I actually listen to a lot of instrumentals, lo-fi type stuff throughout the day, and it's very calming. And I work in customer service industry, so keeping calm is vital. I will say one thing though. So Rob mentioned the Terrence Young Experience. I had to Google it for a second as I was listening to y'all. I actually saw the Terrence Young Experience. He came to Columbia.
He nice.
And it was dope as hell.
He's from Columbia, right?
From Columbia.
I think he's from that
I think
area.
so. Yeah, I think so. So he
Yeah.
actually had like a birthday party show thing on Main Street, this venue. I can't think of what it's called. But me and my wife and a few people went, and we had this cool booth, and it was like right there by the stage. And no, it was dope actually. It was dope. It was him. He had a drummer, and like you're right, people do the solos and whatnot. And no, that shit was dope as hell.
Yeah.
It was dope.
You gotta give it a chance. Because like there's not, it's like any genre of music. There's something for everybody. It's like all rock music is not the same. All hip hop is not the same. There's every you know, there's a little bit of a niche area. You just got to find the thing that resonates with you.
For sure.
Yeah. So you say you're doing something quarterly. That's gonna be on NPR, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share the playlist with you. It's called it's called On the List. We were trying to figure out like what's it called. We needed something kind of clever or whatever. But then I was like, you know what? There's so many times I've gone to places to be like, yo, I'm on the list, and like that's what it is for me. I was like, so who's on the list this month? Like these are people who are on the list this month. And
that's what's up.
It's not just like straight ahead jazz. That's what they call the stuff that you probably think of when you think of jazz. But there's so many things that are jazz adjacent, you know. So I try to make sure there's a good sprinkling of all that represented.
When you say jazz adjacent, to me, the person that comes to mind is John Batiste.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Future.
Robert Glasper. I mean, Robert Glasper is jazz, but like, I mean, there are elements there because, like, if you look up the people in the band, I bet you there's jazz musicians playing with them. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, Man, thank you for that information. We'll be on the lookout for that on the list. Anyway, DC, you can listen to it, man. Maybe we change your mind, man.
No, I'm gonna DC. I'm gonna make you
Don't try to change me.
specifically a playlist. If like the lo-fi vibe is like what you're into, I'm gonna make you a playlist. Yeah.
All right. That's what's up.
That's dope.
So I know we've touched a little bit on NPR and your background, but you also do a podcast, right? From my understanding. 3 of them.
I have 3 podcasts.
Light Flex.
Light Flex. I don't know how you do
Nikki
3,
ain't so
man.
quiet.
That's
3
crazy.
podcasts?
Talk that talk, DC.
Yeah. It's because I was quiet. I had a lot to say, so I'm making up for lost time.
There you go.
Yeah. So I know one is geared towards a lot of Game of Thrones type conversations.
1,000 Eyes on One.
Who's your favorite character out of all the, even if you go to the House of the Dragon and all that stuff, like who's your favorite character of
Are we talking
all
show
of
or are we
Game of
talking
Thrones?
books?
Let's go series because I haven't read the books. I'm not gonna lie to you. So
okay, so if we're talking show, man, who is my favorite character? I love the Blackfish. He was Catelyn Stark's brother. Tanya's gonna be mad at me for saying this, but long live the Blackfish, because I don't believe that off-screen deaths count. So in my mind, he is still alive out there somewhere. My Twitter name used to be Closet Lannister, but like the accents are like Close Lannister, because I love the machinations and just like Machiavellian nature of that whole family. But man, do I have a favorite Game of Thrones character? Hold on,
minus the incest.
I mean, as you think on that, obviously, it's Jon Snow for me.
Yeah,
Jon Snow for me. Team Snow.
He's great. Team Snow. I mean, I'm House Stark, but I really love House Tyrell. And I do love House Martell too. And they got the House Martell and that whole Dorne storyline got done real dirty because they are so much more interesting in the books. Yeah. I'm gonna have to think about this for a little bit because there are lots of characters who I really love, and there's characters that I love to hate, like Ramsay Bolton. Oh my god, what a terrible human being.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, who'd you hate more? It was Ramsay Bolton. Y'all know me, man. I hated Joffrey.
Everybody hates Joffrey.
Yeah, everybody hates Joffrey.
Like everybody hated Joffrey so much that he took a break from acting because people would see him on the street and give him shit.
We talked about that. We talked about that on the pod. That like he was voted as one of the most hated characters on TV in a sense where he was walking out in the street and he said an old lady spit at the ground at him.
God, dog.
Yeah.
Man, I was just doing my job.
I was just doing a job. Yep. And what's her name? Cersei as well. Cersei really took I don't know her real name, so forgive me. But
Lena Headley.
Yeah,
Lena Headley.
Yeah, she really. A lot of people really were at her in real life.
Yeah,
I ain't gonna lie. Like I kind of, cause that eyebrow just stays up in real life. Like I've seen her in other like shows and movies, and that eyebrow stay raised. I'm like, yo, you are Cersei. I don't like it.
Actually, what? My favorite character, they hint at him a little bit. So they call it the three-eyed crow. Or three-eyed crow, but it's the three-eyed raven.
Three-eyed raven, yeah.
The three-eyed crow. So, his name is Brendan Rivers. He is a bastard Targaryen, and his name is Lord Bloodraven. And actually, that's where the name of our podcast comes from, 1,000 Eyes on One, because he was also someone who had a huge network of spies. And they would say, "How many eyes does Lord Bloodraven have?" They say 1,000 eyes, 1,000 eyes on one, because he was everywhere. And so that's how the name of the podcast came to be. How the podcast came to be was that me and Tanya knew each other.
Yeah, shout out Tanya. Shout out
Tanya, Lady Tanya of House Ellis. We knew each other, but her husband, Radar Ellis, he's a friend of mine. He's the one from Revive Music. And so we had been in several circles together. And so we'd see each other and say, "What's up?" And one time I was at a show and there was a break. It was like Winter Jazz Fest or something. And like there was a break. I had camera up. I was like kind of reading. And then me and her were just talking. And like I was really interested in her as a person because I would see the things that she posted on Facebook because she's hilarious. But one day I was like, yo, who is this girl? Because she was talking how she made like her husband like a steak fried in duck fat for Father's Day. And I was like, woo, who is this woman? I love food. And so one day we were talking about Game of Thrones because I started watching in the fifth or the sixth season. And she's like, "Have you read the books?" And I said, "There are books?" And she was like, "Oh." And so she made a book club on a Game of Thrones book club on Facebook. And she's like, "Okay, read this chapter by this time or whatever." But like within the first 2 weeks, like we had left everybody in the dust. I was like, "Yo, so we used to work in the same area." So she's like, "I'm going to take a lunch break. Do you want to come over?" I was like, "Let's meet in the park and we'll talk about the books." So we would just hang out and just talk about the books, and like, well, maybe we should start a podcast because we keep talking about these books so much. And in April, it'll be 9 years that we've had. No, our
Man.
9-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
9 years. Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
All day.
Yeah. And
And
it's been
so-
super fun. I mean, the reason we have the other podcast is because we wanted to talk about stuff that was not in the a world of Ice of Fire, like not in that realm, because we are avid book readers. We love fantasy and fiction and speculative fiction. So we started a podcast called Wine on a book club. Well, no, the book club called Wine on an Empty Stomach, because we enjoy our libations. And so we just pick a book and we get on and we do a live stream about it. And the focus is speculative fiction. And the difference between speculative fiction is a big umbrella that incorporates lots of fiction, like sci-fi and fantasy. But the real question, if you want to know something speculative fiction, is like it's a book that, or a situation that asks the questions, what if this happened? What if you lived in a world where this was the case? And so N.K. Jemisin is one of like our biggest. I'm looking at her books over there. I'm looking at my bookshelf. Be like, who else is on there? But N.K. Jemisin is one of our favorite speculative fiction authors, and we've done several of her books. Yeah. Books are something that we bonded over really quickly. Like, I don't know anybody else who'd be at a show with a book in their bag and then read it, because I do that too. I'm like, oh, I'm not really into this one. And pull a book or my Kindle out of my bag and I'll just read.
While the jazz is playing, you just read.
I mean, whatever music is playing, whatever I'm being paid to film, or during those breaks. And I remember during Winter Jazz Fest, I had a break between things, and I just found a little corner. I sat down in the corner. I just read until it was like the next that I had to film was on. And then recently we started another one called 30 Tuesdays. And that's where we talk about pop culture. And that name is a funny story, because when I was working at Hybrid Music, we had interns in the the Freak still has interns now, but on Tuesdays, we would like go to the bodega and buy a 40, and we just go up to the roof and we drink a 40 like at the end of the workday. And I was talking
40?
about
What year is this?
This is back in like 2011, 2012.
40 though.
That's when my stomach
That's a
could still
throwback.
that was when my stomach could still process those things. So
Man.
I was telling her about that, and I was like, we can't do 40 because like that's ridiculous, but we'll just call it 30 Tuesdays. We'll just call it 30 Tuesdays because that works. And so we invite people on, and we have some drinks. We talk about stuff.
We gotta crash 30 Tuesdays.
You guys should totally come on 30
We gotta
Tuesdays.
crash. Yeah,
Our next one is on Tuesday. We are doing Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Who Framed Roger
Who
Rabbit?
Framed
That's a
Roger
classic.
Rabbit, one of my
That was a
favorites.
perfect-
I mean, but we've done all
Classic.
kinds of stuff. We've done like I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. We did Pootie Tang. We did a Goofy movie last week for Black History Month. We did Messy Love Stories. So we did a Goofy movie and we did Unfaithful. So I mean, it's basically like, what if you want to be on? Tell us what you want to do. We'll watch it. We can get on and talk about it.
Nice. Saudate.
Ooh, we should do a Godfather one.
You want to
We
do
should
it?
do a Godfather one. Y'all could do a Godfather one.
Tanya's never seen The Godfather.
Oh
So, yeah.
man, Godfather 2. We can skip Godfather 3.
We're not doing that. Yeah.
Goodfellas is better.
Goodfellas
Oh,
is
yeah.
on my
It's
list.
good, but it ain't better though. I mean, it's good though.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah, don't
definitely
do that.
better.
What if
but-
we just do
Goodfellas.
Godfather 2?
We'll agree to
We
disagree
do
because
Goodfellas. Casino.
this is going to devolve into something else.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm down to do the first two. We'll ignore the third one. Like, I get that. But
So,
Goodfellas is one of my favorite. Actually, the Goodfellas Diner is not far from me. I drive that. There's like over here, like on the border of Lakewood and
Classic.
Queens, and
Mm.
it's boarded
Nice.
up now. But I think it's a landmark, so they can't destroy it. But I remember the first time I was like, that's that place. Yeah, it's here.
No.
I think
gonna
that's
go
the
get the
coolest
papers,
thing
get the
about being in
papers.
New York.
Jimmy 2 times.
Jimmy 2 times. Yeah. That's the best thing about being in New York, is because like I remember walking to the bus, from my house, walking to the bus stop every morning and just being, this like Foxy Brown and Little Kim and listening to those albums, which I was not allowed to have. So I don't even know how I got them because my parents were really strict about rated R movies and and parental advisory labels.
Man, Dad just learning about so much stuff right now. We love you though, Dad.
Yeah. Hi, Daddy. But I remember listening to those things, or just like listening to Biggie or Jay-Z, and now, or like, even like Fabulous and people like that. But now I'm walking around places and I'm like, oh my God, I just passed by the Marcy train stop, or like I'm in Bed-Stuy and like there's a mural of Biggie. It's like "Spread Love is the Brooklyn Way." Like that never gets old.
I
Good
agree.
stuff.
You know what? Since we have you on here, and it is Women's History Month, or Women's Month, we'll call it. Ed Lover posted something, and the three of us kind of talked about it offline. And he mentioned that the balance of women hip hop is off kilter right now. Everything is about popping P, shaking ass. Basically the vulgar part of Little Kim had a little bit better balance, but she had her vulgar side, then she had her rap side, and everything seems to be about twerking and the vulgar side of what Little Kim brought to the game. I think Nikki had a good balance as well, but he was saying that the balance is off right now of what the female is being represented as right now in hip hop. What are your thoughts on that?
I would like to know your thoughts first, because I have several.
Oh, I like how you threw that.
You guys had a conversation, so what did you think?
We did have a conversation.
So for me personally, I guess I'm a little biased because I don't listen to the female hip hop artists of today. I agree with him on that aspect. I think it is a little unbalanced. Like there's no separation between Lotto and Meg, and I listen to Glorilla. I mean, I guess Glorilla is a little bit different, but all of it is kind of the same. Almost how what you were saying, you listen to the radio and you just keep hearing the same thing, basically packaged a little bit differently. That's how I feel about most of hip hop, but especially the female side. So that's my thoughts, but I know the other two can chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, a lot of hoe raps. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what it is these days in terms of popular women rappers. Is who can be the biggest hoe. You know what I'm saying? Who got the most ninjas on deck? Who can cut off the most men? Who can get the most out of a man? Who can bust it open the best? Things like that. So, you've got other rappers. You've got your Rhapsodies. You've got your, I think Snow the Products. But even those types of artists do not get nearly the kind of shine that a Sexy Red gets, for example. I would say it is a little off kilter. I think it's been off kilter for a while. I mean, I don't think it's unique to this era, like 2020 and beyond, or even 2015 and beyond. I'd say it's been like that for about 20 years. And I would say it started with Lil' Kim, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And one thing too that DC mentioned in our off-topic chat is even the females that are not necessarily speaking on that in their music, they're still popping ass and twerking. It's like for no reason. Like, why are we doing that? So I just wanted to add that to it.
You know what I'm saying? Doechii specifically, I would say it's like, even though she doesn't rap, I'll throw SZA in there. Like I don't
SZA,
like SZA. Yeah, SZA to me is a true artist. She's a great songwriter, makes great songs, and she's literally naked in her videos. And I'm like, I don't even know why. Like that wasn't necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like some have to kind of do it. Like they ain't really like Sexy Red. She ain't really bringing much to the table, so she kind of needs a gimmick.
Yeah.
SZA, you don't need a gimmick. Like why are you doing this? So that's kind of my thought.
T, what you got?
Oh man, so my thoughts on it, and we talked about it because DC was like, Ed Lover's tripping on this and this and this. We talked about it in our text, and I was like, nah, he kind of right. And
he brought some bad examples. That's the reason.
He did.
I said he was tripping. He brought up some bad examples,
but
Ed Lover. T saved them, and I was like, all right. But
you
gotta
go ahead. Back then, we had the Brat. She wore baggy clothes like us. You know what I mean? Back then, right? And of course, the queen of it all, who made great music and was seen globally without showing her skin, was Missy. When we talk about hip hop, and I remember Rob was like, "Man, I forgot about Missy." I'm like, Missy was the one. She was the standard at that time. And then of course to DC saying it was a gimmick. So I agree with what Ed Lover saying. It has been a bit tainted with just sexuality. We're just gonna display that because we know what it is. Sex sells, right? You see it on billboards, you see it everywhere. We lived in Germany. DC talk about it all the time. You could sell cologne with a naked woman. Topless. You could sell cologne.
We weren't allowed to watch German TV after 10 p.m.
Yeah, I remember that Viva. So I remember those things though, right? And
Yeah.
because it just sold that way. And so this is the world we
Okay.
in. Unfortunately, social media is playing a big part in it because you can just pull your phone out, show some skin, and make money. And so now if I have a gimmick to what DC saying, I can rap a little bit or sing a little bit, and I can show some skin. They're looking at it from a monetary standpoint, not of respecting their self. That's how I view it.
Woo! Okay, here we go. So,
Come on.
first of all, we talk about people who are here from today, but are you guys familiar with Millie Jackson?
Oh yes.
Right? So she's
That's
been
the
doing it
brat.
forever.
The brat
right?
sampled her a lot because she was very
She
her
was
language.
call her.
there.
You can call her vulgar because we're going to
Yep.
talk about it being Women's Month. So about the artists that you guys have mentioned, if you guys haven't listened to the rest of the album, then you are doing them all a disservice. It's like I listen to hip hop, I listen to rap, but I don't listen that much because I like more instrumental music, like I like pop stuff or whatever. But all of these women who you're talking about have songs on their albums about mental health. They have songs about fighting depression. They have songs about substance abuse or just or about saving their friends or watching their friends go through physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Oh, they're covering all of these topics. What gets on the radio? The stuff that has to do with sex. Is it part, for me, do I consider it part of a sexual revolution where women are allowed to have the same agency and to talk about their sexuality the way that men do? Yes, they do. But as far as like and they wear the things that they want to express their bodies and their like the way that they feel, whether artistically or through fashion, yes, they do. But when you talk about having a gimmick and you talk about who controls the music industry, it's a male dominated industry. And if you want people to pay attention to you, you have to use what works, right? You have to, what's going to get you out there? Like what is going to appeal to a male audience or maybe get a conversation started? It's like, oh, look at me, I'm going to twerk or whatever. But there are so many women out there who are not doing that. And I remember listening to Little Kim and listening to Foxy Brown. I was like, I was what, 14 or 15 years old. And I was like, oh my God, they're talking about all the horny things that I can't even say. Like, I didn't know that women could say this. I didn't know it was okay to say this. And so I really appreciate that freedom because men have been talking about getting their dick sucked forever. They've been talking about leaving hoes behind and like all of us sharing this bitch and that bitch and like using every hole at the same time, like, and orgies, and like listen to hip hop or just like any other music. Like women have been objectified. So this is how it feels when the tables are turned, and it's not even the tables are turned. Like these are like if you listen to me and Tanya talk about stuff, we don't mince our words. These are the same things that women are saying. Like you don't think that we think about that, but we do. We are just as sexual and horny as the men are, probably more, to be completely honest. But you know, we have always
Women are not more horny than men.
Yeah, we could fight.
Do women have glory holes? Because men, we will stick our dick in a hole and not know what's on the other side and just see what happens. Is that what women do?
I can see that being a thing that women could do. Yeah, either spread
Oh,
the
we
ass
gotta
cheeks,
pull up
spit
on
it
one
up
of
on the wall.
these. Hey, we gotta pull up on one of these Tuesdays. We gotta pull up.
Yeah, you
we
totally
talk about
do.
real life, and I ain't never heard of no.
Yeah.
Maybe it exists, but I've never heard of the woman version
I mean,
of a glory
I've heard.
hole.
When I found out what sounding was, I didn't throw up in my mouth a little bit, but I was like, I'm not going to kink shame anyone, but if you don't know what that is, use a private browser and Google that shit. Prepare to be horrified. I promise you, you will sleep better not knowing what it is. But I think that right now that we're in a time where women can be more expressive and they're like, fuck you and what you think about it. Like, why can't I be myself? Why can't I talk about these things? And if that's what's going to get me on the radio, and like if me talking about, like, they call it pussy rap, right? Like all these women are talking about getting their pussies eaten or their asses eaten or whatever. But like we went through a whole era of like, nah, I don't do that for men. I don't eat pussy. I don't do this. Blah 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 blah. Like, why not? Why not? What are you like? How does that make you? How does that make you any less
Wayne
of
made
anything?
it cool. Shout out to Wayne.
Yeah, you know,
What he said, wine and dine.
Easy.
you know.
Yeah.
Wine and
So
dine. Yeah.
and I think like the evolution of that has been really, really important because of, you know, representation and stuff. Like I work in a male dominated industry. I don't know how many times I've walked on a shoot and somebody's like, "Oh, are you the singer?" And I'm like, "No, this is my shoot." You know, like, because I'm sure you can't tell. I'm 5'1". I'm a tiny lady. I'm a tiny lady. So like I walk into the room and they're like, "Oh, what is she doing here?" I was like, "I have like tripods on my back. What do you mean?" Or like even if I do a shoot if there's me and like one of my white colleagues and who's a man, they'll walk over like blah 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 blah. He's like, no, she's the boss. You got to talk to her. Like those are questions that you have to direct to her. But like I have constantly had to fight my way. Luckily, I work with a lot of good people, but you learn really quickly. Like, oh, someone come up to you like, hey, let me get your number. Maybe we could talk. I'm like, here's a number to my office. Call that. Like here, call the office. Like, you want to be in touch? Good. I was like,
Another
what is
flex.
it? What is it that you're working on? How can we collaborate in that sense? But it's hard to be a woman and to break out, and it's hard to like even amongst women to break out and have your voice heard. I love Missy Elliott for the things that she's done, because she was someone who brought a lot of women together to collaborate. Like, Lady Marmalade is the thing that comes to the mind, where you've got all of these amazing, incredible artists coming together. I don't know if you guys know this, but Babyface a couple years ago produced an album called Ladies Night. And it opens like with a little thing with Angie Martinez in the beginning talking. And he's got like Doechii on that album. He's got Tiana Major 9. He's got Coco Brown. And it's a collaboration with all these women have these voices are coming together on one project. And I love that. So do I think, I feel like if you think that there is too much pussy rap or like this or whatever going on the radio, listen to the rest of their albums.
I'll say this. It's if they're whatever they're putting out, it's not my responsibility to dig deeper. It's their responsibility to make me want to dig deeper.
You know what? Then whose responsibility is it to I'm standing here, I'm telling you okay, the producer who's going to put this out, he's a man. The marketing person who's going to help me with it, he's a man. I have to figure out how to play the game to be able to do what I want by following whatever lane or example of what they're going to do. And then I can speak out and talk about it. Megan Thee Stallion's album that came out, what's the one a couple albums ago? People don't like it because she was talking, the entire album was talking about her mental health journey and how depressed she was and how quickly the spotlight will turn from you if you're not doing these things. And that has always been the case. Speak out a little bit and see what happens to you. And that's I'm thinking about even beyond hip hop. Remember when the chicks who used to be called the Dixie Chicks came out and said that they don't like George Bush? Ruined their career. Their career. So it's speak out about something else that's a little bit political or just not in your lane sexually. If you're not being a sex object, then, we don't want to hear about it. Tanya says something all this time, and I'm not a Bible girl, but you can correct me because I'll probably get this verse wrong. But you're oh, why is she wearing that? Da, 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 da. First of all, keep your hands to yourself. But it's something about if your left hand offends you, then cut it off, right? Just because I'm out here wearing this doesn't mean that you need to touch me. And I say this as somebody who won't wear a skirt outside after 9 o'clock because I don't want to have to worry about that. And I shouldn't have to. Why can't I just be up here in my skin? Why can't I go on my podcast and talk about you need to be all over my clit and how to do it right so I can come? They're taking responsibility for their own pleasure. And if it's whether or not you like it, there's some little girl who is not saying, I'm going to be a hoe because of this. She's saying, whoa, I can say the other things that I have on my mind because they're doing it.
That's a different perspective.
That's why bro. That's why we ask someone that doesn't have the same utensils that we have.
So, Nikki, one last question.
Sure.
For me,
I feel like DC wants to say something else. I see. Yeah.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
Let's go.
But it doesn't change the fact that when you put out a single, you're selling your album, you're selling yourself. Everything you're saying is true. For example, Lotto. I kind of don't put Lotto in the whole rap category because I like Lotto, and she does. She raps out sexual stuff, but she has a lot more depth. Because I actually do like her music, and so I do understand what you're saying.
I would say that if you think that she has more depth, then to give the other people a chance. And I say this as someone who's not listening to all of it.
But here's the thing, though: when she puts herself out, she presents herself as somebody who has more to offer.
So what is the presentation and your perception of what the presentation should be is based on what?
Well, what we're talking about.
If she wanted to put her ass out there and she could do that, because I've seen her perform in shorts that eat her booty.
Yeah, 100%.
So
what
what makes
that?
what makes
I'm
that
saying, though,
moose
is
knuckles and shit, right?
But what I'm saying though is, even as that's part of her marketing strategy. it is not her marketing strategy. So, for example, like a Sexy Red, for example, her marketing strategy is being a whore. Maybe I'm missing something,
Is
but
it
I don't
being
know
a whore, just
anything
being
else
sexually
about a Sexy
expressive?
Red other than her being. I mean, she even has a lip gloss line, and she has a lip gloss called Gonorrhea. You know what I'm saying?
That's hilarious.
So, like
Wait,
that's.
let me pause you on that, because Erica Badu has incense called Badu Pussy.
But
That's true.
again,
That's true.
that doesn't dominate her marketing strategy. We know that she's far more dynamic
It's
based
sold
on
out
the
all the
music
time.
that huh? She does,
She
but
said it's
that's not
sold out
all
all
she
the
does.
time.
But what I'm saying though is that's not all she does. I'm not saying that, hey, don't do this, cover up. I'm not saying that. But what I'm
Mhm.
saying is, even when we talk about Erica Badu, we look at her singles. Like her singles, not her albums, not doing a deep dive. You
Mhm.
can tell by her singles alone that
Yeah.
there's more to her
And I would say
than
that in a male-dominated industry, who's picking the artists aren't picking their singles. They can have a little bit of say and say, okay, this is the one that I want to come out. But if Glorilla's song about watching her best friend get beat up by her boyfriend and like trying to save her from that, that's not going to be the one that dominates the airwaves. It's going to be, it's 7 p.m. Friday, it's 95 degrees.
Yeah.
That's the one that they're going to want to sell because it's a banger, it's a bop, people can sing about it, it's not going to depress anybody, you know?
I
So
hear you, but it's
if
been
the
done.
people who are like,
It's
yeah,
been done. Missy
it,
did it. Lauryn Hill did it. I mean, we're
yeah,
not.
but
It's
those
not
are
as if we're
different vibes.
talking about
And
things
because
that cannot be done.
I would say Lauryn Hill and Missy are in a different category because they are musicians in a different kind of way, right? Missy is like a producer. Sorry, let me take that back before she gets mad at me. Ms. Lauryn Hill. Yeah, I've worked with her a few times. Let me tell you a funny story about Ms. Lauryn Hill.
Let's go.
Yeah, we were working on this documentary thing that I hope will eventually one day come out. And we were talking about like the intro, what the trailer should be like. Me and Tariq are working on it. We spent a bunch of time going. I don't know how much I could talk about it, but we spent some time going and filming these interviews. And we were making a trailer and we were in this like meeting with her and like on Zoom or whatever. And we're like, well, you know what? Somebody is like, we got to write the voiceover. There's going to be voiceover like over this footage that I shot. And we're like, yeah, well, who's going to do that? And she's like, I've been known to pick up a pen in my time. And we were just like, whoa. But I think that the other thing that you have to recognize about these artists is that a lot of them are really young. They know what they know. They know what they've seen. They've seen this is what works. And so they're going to do that. And I think that if you stay with them and check out the evolution, and even if you think that this is how they're presenting themselves, it's like, you know, this is what you have to do to get in the door. And sometimes you got to do it because people are going to talk. Hashtag Jimmy Butler every photo day. Like just trolling people on purpose because you want people to talk
I like
about
how you brought that back to that. That's
You
true.
know?
Jimmy did that
Yeah.
every year.
Every year. So when I saw his pictures this year, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
doing nothing.
Well, I also think there's one thing that, you know, all of us can recognize that, you know, there's a lane for everyone. And I think the concern becomes there's literally dope artists that don't get the opportunities because they won't speak about some of these things, right? Like Rhapsody. I think DC mentioned her as well. Rhapsody can probably wrap circles around 90% of the men that's out here rapping today, but she doesn't get the same type of recognition or the same push that a Sexy Red would get, where you start thinking talent-wise, Sexy Red, Rhapsody, talent is more on the Rhapsody side. But because
it's like you think about
Sexy is willing to go there and talk about, you know, her booty hole being brown and her coochie being pink, she gets the pub, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can talk about artists. I'm thinking about like Bahamadia or Jean Grey, right? Like these are some of the like best lyricists, female lyricists of all times, and you're not hearing from them. But I think it's just.
Did it.
Say again?
Remy Ma did it.
Yeah, Remy Ma too.
There's a precedent.
There's a precedent set for them, but it's like when you're working in an industry that capitalizes on sexuality and that says like women are supposed to do this, then they're going to take advantage of the system to make the money that they want in order to do other things. Because Trina was doing that too. And her album, she was like, oh, I'm the baddest bitch, whatever. But then if you listen to her second album, she was like, get that money, buy real estate. Get that money, do this. Get that money, do this because you want to build up your future. like I said, it might not be the singles that they're presenting that are out there. And I think a lot of people that present that aspect of them because people don't want to hear that. And there's like party music and intellectual music or whatever. And that's like if hip hop across the board, right?
Yeah.
Like you have people like A Tribe Called Quest who are always going to be classic. And then you have people like anybody else who's not like conscious hip hop was a thing, and conscious hip hop still is a thing, but you're not really hearing too much about it outside of a couple of pockets. And I think that when the people who are worried about like, oh my God, what is this doing to our daughters? Blah, blah, blah. Women are doing this. Like I listen to all that shit. I'm fine. I am fine. I am out there. I can say shit as dirty as all of them. And those are aspects of my personality and self that like, that have their own space. But I also am not going to condemn them for doing what they need to do to get the recognition that they want, because what else are they doing on the side? Like what do they do outside of off the mic? Because they know what works. It's a formula. And I think about like even like in jazz, like the way that for a long time instruments were gendered. Like women couldn't play drums. That's masculine. Women can't play the saxophone because look at how their mouth looks when they're doing it. Women can't play. They can play the flute because it's this way, but they can't do this. And that doesn't come from us. We're not the problem.
In the famous words of Diamond from Players Club, make the money, don't let the money make you. I'll end on that.
That part.
That's it right there. All right. So this last thing, I'm gonna have fun with you. I want you to do a blind unranking. All right.
What does that mean?
I'm just gonna give you the name. You're gonna rank them out of 3, from 3 to 1.
Okay.
You just tell me. I'm gonna give you the name. You're gonna rank them first, second, or third.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm gonna give you the next name. Then you got to pick whichever place you didn't pick.
Left.
All right.
Okay.
So imagine you got a phone. There's nothing in that phone.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the 3 contacts that you're gonna call to come perform. Prince.
2.
Whitney Houston.
I feel like whoever comes after that is going to be somebody I want to say more. So I'm going to say 3.
Michael
and
Jackson.
Actually, you know what? Yeah, because then I would have put her at 2. But yeah, let's give Whitney 3, even though I love her.
Michael Jackson.
1. Easy. Easy. Greatest entertainer of all time, period. Yeah. And I would, honestly, those are all people. I was doing a gig and like I had a break and they were like, it was like a wedding band gig. So they play like all this popular music and stuff, like the things that people want to hear at their wedding, but performed by a band. And I remember like, I Want to Dance with Somebody came on. There was a Michael Jackson song that came on. A Prince song came on and a George Michael song came on. And I was having the time of my life. And the guy who was filming with me was like, man, all those people are dead. And I was like, way to deflate me. Because I hadn't thought about that. Like these are people, and these are the artists that I also aspire to work with because they're making music that's going to last forever. They're making songs.
You put that on a
forever.
Facebook post 7 years ago. That's what I wanted to do.
Oh, did I? What was the ranking?
Oh, you didn't rank them. You just said those are 3 people that inspire you the most.
Oh, yeah. As far as like artists making music?
I'm going to have you blind rank them. I just want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. Like, I love Whitney. I have to say that I've had the pleasure of seeing, like, because I work in music, like, sometimes you just don't want to hear it anymore. Like, I had to, like, get my love back for music after, like, being at shows up late at night and constantly going in and out. And now, because I live in New York, I make sure I go see and if there's somebody that I want to see who I loved, I've seen Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson killed it. Ludacris opened for her. Busta Rhymes came out and performed. I saw The Roots 2 days ago. That was crazy. I saw Elton John. When I tell you that I've never seen anybody with more star power walk out onto a stage, I was just like, me and Bess, I was like, yo, he's a star. He sounded great. But then what you forget about John is that he's a badass piano player. Like, woo! Rock and roll piano, that shit was wild. I saw Johnny Mathis do a Christmas show, and I'm seeing him again in October. One of the last greatest crooners alive. I swooned. Like, I was like, ooh, when he started to sing Chances Are, which is in so many like mafia movie love scenes. And I saw Mariah Carey do her Christmas show. And I went and I reserved, like, I was, not that I was prepared to be disappointed, but I've heard things about her voice, like that she doesn't sound good. She was so good. Me and Tanya went. She was so good that we forgot to clap.
Wow.
And that was at the show where Rihanna made her, asked her to sign her titty. I was there.
Oh yeah, that was all over there, and I remember that.
Yeah.
All right. Have you ever reserved a spot in Times Square for New Year's?
No, but I've been invited twice, and you know what? I don't like being outside when it's cold.
Facts.
I don't
I'm
like
with you.
being outside. It's cold. There's a billion people out there.
People
Uh,
coughing. All
it's
kind of shit.
it's not even that. It's like it's cold. The weather is you never know what it's gonna be. But getting home from the city on New Year's Eve is a nightmare. The trains don't run the way they're supposed to. Cabs, you're gonna charge like it cost me maybe between $30 and $50, which I'm trying never to do, to take a cab back from Manhattan late night, right? New Year's Eve, it's double that. Halloween, it's double that. Tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day, it's gonna be double that too. So no, I would rather. New Year's Eve is not actually one of my favorite holidays. It's Halloween and St. Patrick's Day. Like that's when I want to be out. I think
All
you
that
asked me
green.
something real quick about just like how I stay grounded. I meditate
Yep.
like 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I went on a silent. Tomorrow is the anniversary. I went on a silent meditation retreat to Maui. 10 days, no talking, no eye contact, no gesturing, blah blah blah. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. But those tools that they gave me to be able to like, because I'm a crazy person, to be able to like make it were invaluable. So yeah, and I listen to music and I write.
Mm-hmm. As a last thing before we go, there's gonna be another Nikki Birch behind you, walking this path that you creating as well for women in this industry. What advice would you
all the
give?
time.
What advice would you give that young lady?
Work hard, do the things that you want to do, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't. Because I never thought that I would be doing this. I had no idea that I thought that I would be teaching. Like I said, I was a psych major. I love psychology. I will eventually go back and get a master's because I want to open like a private practice to do counseling. I don't think I have the energy to do a PhD. But whatever you dream is really possible. Like it really is. And I told my brother this a couple weeks ago. I was like, you might find that living out your wildest dreams looks like something that you didn't even know was possible. Like who knew when I was making SWV music videos with my sisters in the backyard, we like drew the MTV logo and we'd like be in the trees, like I'd be filming them. Who knew that would end up being like the thing that I do to pay rent, Stick with, and and if you don't know what it is, go back to the things that you used to love to do. You'll find yourself again.
For sure.
Yes, man. So DC, you good? You got anything, bro?
Man, relax, bro.
We got that. Nah, I'm just saying we got that hate. We got that jazz for haters.
Yeah, but you know what? DC, let me DC, let me tell you something. Like I had really, 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 really tough times somewhere between like 2011 and 2016, 17. It was very, very dark for me, even though I was doing beautiful things that were really incredible. And there's a point to the story, I promise. But I remember being like, yo, people say you got to be grateful for things, like say 3 things you got to be grateful for or whatever. And the only things I could think of like every night before I went to sleep were related to my dog. I was like, I'm thankful for Tips. I'm thankful that she's so cute. I'm thankful that she's right here for me, right here with me right now. And then eventually I got to came to like all these other things and it really like practicing gratitude changed my life. But before that, and before my dark streak, I got voted Hater of the Year 4 years in a row. So let's do it.
Well, let's be clear.
Yo, that's crazy.
I see you trying to frame a false narrative on your boy. You know what I'm saying? DC is not a hater. You know what I'm saying? But
that's amazing.
He's a truth teller. He's a truth teller.
Do not hate jazz music. Do not hate jazz music.
No, there's something
I'm just
for
not
everybody.
a fan of jazz music.
Yeah, and that's because you haven't found the one yet. Like,
I'm gonna give DC some flowers, man, because he's been hitting the hammer on the head, lately with some things he gets. I would say this: we, unfortunately, shame on us, but we don't read the Game of Thrones books, right?
It's a lot. It's a commitment. It is a commitment.
I believe it.
It took me a year. I read all 5 of them. And it was so much fantasy that after I finished the series, like I read biographies and autobiographies because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I will say that the books are so good that I would be waiting for the subway to come, and we like walk down, you see people or whatever, and then I would look up and I would be the only one on the platform because the train came and left and I didn't even know, like just in front of me. The other author who I have to mention because he was the first one I read after I was ready to come back to fantasy. Shout out to Andrew Davenport for putting me on. Is Brandon Sanderson, his Stormlight Archive, that book being The Way of Kings. If you don't like fantasy, I will preface this by saying the books are long, super long. His audiobooks can get up into the 72-hour range because the books are so long, but it doesn't feel like that. And I don't care who asked me. If you asked me the best prologue for a book, the prologue from The Way of Kings.
For sure.
Zeth Sun Villano wore white the day he was to kill a king.
We on it. I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
But I say this,
So you-
DC called it right, season 5, because I always like to give him shit when he wrong. So I live for it, right?
That's because I'm right so much he hates it. You know what I'm saying? And
So he said it, season 5, Game of Thrones, the end of season 5. He was like, bro, Arya Stark is going to be the main character, bro. She's going to be the it factor. And I was like, nah, it's Jon Snow. You were right, bro. Sorry, Stark. She did her thing at the end.
yeah,
When it counted.
Yeah, she was the one.
When it counted. She was the one.
Yeah.
I give you
I
that.
didn't read the book, by the way.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, when we do our podcast, we always have like separate things, like, you know, for book readers, this is for you. You know, we'll talk about that, but we often just cover the show stuff. Like, we might call back to things in the book because we recognize that, you know, it is a commitment to read those books, and considering that there's 2 more that are supposed to come out, which is a whole other thing. But we used to host Game of Thrones trivia nights, and so we'd have people come in, and the first thing that we did was, are there any book readers in the room? And if there were, we'd make sure that we asked them book questions, because we'd have people on teams. Because, you know, we can get really deep, and we wrote our own questions. We weren't picking them from the internet. So I remember we had some guy who was like, I win Game of Thrones trivia every time I go, and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, oh, because our questions are hard. He's like, oh, they can't be that difficult. So when we start our trivia, we do anagrams. You know what anagrams are? It's like when you scramble a word and you have to guess what the word is because the letters are scrambled, like, you know, like Jon Snow, but like the letters are mixed up. He didn't make it past that round.
Oh, wow.
And that's our great equalizer. That's the one, like, whether you know stuff or not, like, you can guess, if you can, you know, rearrange letters in your mind, like, you can get some extra points. He dropped out.
Yeah. So
If there was a Godfather game, I would win it. Maybe Goodfellas too, but definitely Godfather.
Well, we'll
I'm
do.
winning
I'm
that.
gonna talk to after this. I have
all
to
the
record
books.
with
I
Tanya.
got all the books, watched all the movies,
Yeah.
anagram, whatever.
Yeah.
yeah,
Getting 100.
All
for
right.
sure.
Well,
Well,
we'll
shout
do
out
for 30
Tanya
Tuesdays.
again. Yeah. I got your number now. Now I'll finally track you down.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find you. We're gonna have to pull up on one of these Tuesdays
Yeah.
and just break bread with you. And we appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
for letting
welcome.
me track you down. Thank you for joining the show to meet
Thanks
the
for
fellas.
being persistent.
Yeah, no doubt. For sure. Definitely proud of you. I'm gonna say that.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? For sure, man. Like, you know, you one of the homies, man. It's always good to see the alum, because a lot of great people came from that area. And it's
Something
good to
in the
see
water,
you.
man.
It had to be.
Yeah.
And so, like, definitely proud of you. So keep going. We cheering you on, looking for the next big thing for you. And I'm gonna keep in touch. We gotta pull up on you.
Yeah.
And before we always wrap, you heard the show. You know, you're gonna hear Brother Rod here. He's gonna give you some words of encouragement, not just for you, but anybody else who's listening, man. So Rod, bro, it's you.
Happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts.
Yep, half glass full.
There it is.
Half
Always.
glass full all day.
There it is, man. So thank you again, Nikki. It's good seeing you.
Thanks for having
Glad
me.
you're doing well. Good to see you doing great. We're gonna be back again. It's National Women's Month, and continue to be great. Not just this month, every
All day,
So
every day.
yeah, man. As the homie Rod, like
As I twerk off the screen.
As she twerk.
That's a bar.
That is a bar. I love that, man. But man, as always, man, it's the homie Rod, like to enter with 3 words. I like to end it, man. Cue the music.